Well, thank you, and what a privilege it is to share the stage with Your Highness. We've come to know each other the last few years, and it's been quite a journey for me in the kingdom to see what's happened with the world of energy, and now the world of mining. And Your Highness, I'd like to sort of get your thoughts immediately about that. The energy transition, of course, we can talk about that, but energy and mining and how you're approaching everything. And I have a feeling you're going to answer any question I may not ask as well. So what's on your mind?
What's in my mind is to disturb the organization of this session.
I'm ready.
Here, the host is giving me a thumb up, so he's another anarchist around. So I have to be transparent. As you know, we've been in OPEC Plus, we've been the most transparent international organization ever. So transparency dictates that I would tell our good audience here that somebody had set some questions and somebody worked on answers. And I forfeit the questions and the answers, so we'll throw it away.
Throw it away? Done.
There is nothing better than being spontaneous. Spontaneousness, do get to your message to people directly, as much as people feel it as being genuine, straight, out of the heart, out of your consciousness, out of your beliefs. People probably most likely would trust you. Now, you've asked me about so many things, but I want to say a few words. This event is one of many. As you know, with all what is going on in the world, including what is happening to the virus, this is the ambitious Saudi Arabia, and this is the ambitious, hopefully, partners of Saudi Arabia. It is very overwhelming to see this number of audience here at this juncture. And it tells you a lot about how people are willing to adventure in coming to Saudi Arabia as a country of hope. And it is a country of energy, but this time around, the type of energy is completely different. We've been a serious hydrocarbon producer, and we have aged and matured in that industry. But this time around, the type of energy that we are demonstrating is our youth energy. This country have a better energy resource, which is a youthful, ambitious, determined, young, I call them cadets, of both women and men, that are running with the torch of their the future to be of Saudi Arabia, be it the vision of 2030, or be it even everything beyond that. They owe it to themselves, and they owe it to their own, hopefully, children when they come.
Your statement there a few years ago, when I was still at Dow, I was interviewed, and they said, how do you find the workforce in Saudi Arabia? And I said, we sent 3,000 young Saudis around the world to be trained at Dow facilities, and the best thing I can say about that is all the people that were training them didn't want to send them back. They were that good. And I think it's an unknown part of the country, and I'm so glad you chose to open up on that.
Well, the products, the proof, as they say, is in the pudding, and we are very conscious of the pudding that we're developing. In our case, we're developing too many goodies and too many puddings. All what you need to do is go around and visually see the city of Riyadh and every other city in Saudi Arabia. And if I can As you know, English is my second language, but you know, the bottle, the taboo bottle of the untabooed has been unleashed. And with that, energy comes out and ambition comes out. And therefore, to me, this is their true transition. It's the transition of people determined to move from here to somewhere else. We're also being realist. We have bequeathed some successes and some failures, and we're not shy from reaching out to our honesty and saying we have a double whammy tasks. One is to rectify what has been happening in the past that we should attend to, because if not attended to and left as it is, it would not be an enabling force, but it will be more of a crippling element. Therefore, having to recoup from some of these ill mistakes that were taken in the past is a mandatory thing and a priority. The second element would be to see ourselves where we can fit ourselves given our own endowments. Now, this event will focus on a very major endowment of Saudi Arabia, which is minerals. And it could not have come in a more timely manner than today, when we are going through so-called energy transition, which is addressing a much more complicated issue. And that complication gets even more when talking about national circumstances for those who are the proponents of these ideas. Clearly, the world needs to have that flexibility to ensure that whatever we do deliver us all a successful energy transition. I have been consistent saying any transition in anything in the world must be governed by three pillars. The first is energy security, because it is the most paramount issue that we need to be guided and have tried to avoid disturbing. Two, we must be mindful of billions of people that have not had their own share of economic development and growth and prosperity. And for that, they need to be given not only the opportunity, but the helping hand and the support to enable them to do so. Third, the legacy of climate change is disturbing, but we have to be cognizant of the fact that while we are doing all of the above, we need to be also seriously attentive to climate change, because without which we're not going to create a sustainable economy and a sustainable way of living in the future. The calling amongst our youth, even in Saudi Arabia, is that we would like to have a better environment to live within. Fourth, we should not underestimate, as a subset, the human ingenuity of being creative. Right now in our ministry, I have a team whom I'm very proud to say the composure of it are actually, majority are women, who are working hard on looking at technologies that will deliver us, be it in our concept, the circular carbon economy, which we believe that would give us a serious sense of focus on what to do to give us that ambition. Still continue producing hydrocarbon, still exporting hydrocarbon, still monetizing hydrocarbons, and still manufacturing materials from hydrocarbons, yet making sure that we will do all of our best when it comes to the efficient use of these resources, the mitigation of any remnants of emissions. We have a proud record when it comes to our methane emissions. Andrew, you sit in the board of Aramco also, and you know how exemplary Aramco is when it comes to methane emissions. We will be engaged with the global methane emission, which has been put together now, because we actually want to share our experience, how successful we have been when it comes to methane reduction. Our job is to make sure that through the Saudi Green Initiative and the Middle East Green Initiative that the Crown Prince had put together, and he's so adamant about executing it to the letter, which is a composure of too many initiatives that would deliver us, for our own sake, for our own country, economic development, yet mindful of the environmental hazards and the mitigation and the adaptation for what may come as a result of development. We are also mindful of the fact that we need to lend a supporting and helping hand to our partners in the region and elsewhere, including countries in Africa and Southeast Asia, in the form of providing them with clean cooking fuel and what have you. The mineral element now, which is, I'll leave it for our friends in the Ministry of Industry and the ecosystem within the mineral industry in Saudi Arabia to expose. Again, this side of the story, as a result of moving towards renewable, more and EVs and what have you, more and more the world will become more reliant on minerals, which would be required in manufacturing all of these goods. The concern we have, as we ourselves moving to that direction, is we want to make sure that our resources are exploited, and we do have abundance of it, and we will welcome, as my friend and colleague, Minister Bender Al-Khaif probably had mentioned, that we welcome partnership, and we are seeking partnership all to the full chain, be it the upstream, the midstream, or even the downstream. However, we are even mindful of the fact that if we may be limited in any type of resource domestically, we have the foresight to put together, through our champion in minerals, Ma'aden, a subsidiary company that will be developed very soon, to adventure abroad with partner. We are also reaching out to our nuclear program, and let me be very explicit about it. We do have a huge amount of uranium resources, which we would like to exploit, and we will be doing it in the most transparent way, and we will be bringing partners, and we will be exploiting that resource, and we will be manufacturing it, and we will be developing it all the way to the yellow cake, and we will be commercially monetizing that resource. We will be doing all of the above. However, let me make sure of throwing my warning bleeps. We should not forfeit energy security for the sake of a publicity stunts. That transition need to be well thought of transition as opposed to, I wouldn't call it names. The other thing, let's not forfeit energy transition to energy security for moving away from the old classical concern of being over-reliant on the Middle East when it comes to oil, to some different type of energy security challenge, which has to do with the availability of these minerals and the concentration of the ownership of these minerals, and how the world may be exposed to any type of oligopoly when it comes to pricing these minerals. You're better than me, and many here are way much better than me, but there are projections that talks about, for example, lithium demand might grow by 600%. To name few, copper, zinc, alumina, nickel, whatever it is. If you can look at these so-called transition scenarios and just try to quantify what would be the demand for all of the above, including EVs, and see where is the resource availability, and see how much of the concentration is in certain parts of the world, and ask yourself the question, aren't we going to transition from an energy security problem when it comes to oil and the conventional materials, or to another type of energy security with no particular careful, thoughtful approach of how these things will be attended to? So, to me, I still worry about this transition because it may end up being a leap into the future, unfortunately, an unknown future.
And the elephant in the room, and by the way, this man does his homework on everything, and you saw just now a roadmap in 10 minutes explained with logic and detail, and having worked with your team, Your Highness, you have brought a first-class organization, men and women, to analyze what needs to be done to do
women and men.
Women and men, excuse me, my bad. But I would also say all of the above is inclusive of two things that His Highness said, I'd love your comment on. One is, if I can use a quote from earlier panel, the elephant in the room, a circular carbon economy can't be replaced by a linear inorganic chemical economy. In other words, what's going to happen with all the waste batteries? What's going to happen with all the waste photovoltaics, all the waste solar? All those things have not been addressed in the conversation of the transition. So that remains an unaddressed topic, and you're addressing it as a topic. Second is value add. I think a country like Saudi Arabia could sit on its hands for a long time on its endowment. It's chose with Vision 2030 not to do that. The great story that's not being told that you just talked about, His Excellency, the Industry Minister and Mining Minister talks about, is really how to attract the full value chain. So can you address energy security but also supply chain security? In other words, we have minerals in the kingdom, we have energy, we have new energy, we're trying to attract end users so we can do value add, innovation. But from a supply chain criticality point of view, how would you talk about that?
Well, we are not different from the whole world. You know, we are going to be using 50% of our power sector will be moved to renewable. You are the chairman of a company that would produce electrical cars. So our challenge is no different than the other people challenges. However, what we're trying to do is to make sure that we do all of the above. it just so happened that we are properly endowed, more endowed than others. And this is the kind of facetiousness that you, from now and then, attend to by asking people, why should I forfeit my endowments to go into a leap of a future that I'm not properly endowed with? The way we work now, but I would like to give just a cynical example of how things evolving in that existing transitionality of the transition. Again, my English is second language, so, but just to give you the cynical example, here is countries that are swearing wholeheartedly never to use hydrocarbon, wholeheartedly never use coal. And look at them today. In some countries, in the event they were hosting, the wind did not work. In countries now that have abandoned using nuclear, are using more coal today, doubling their take of coal today. And the reality would fall, rightly, where people now are reconsidering greening nuclear and greening gas. This is just in the matter of last 5 months. Can you take that further forward and see how the world would evolve? In the US for now, the US is producing nicely, and the US will grow its production in 22, and the US will probably, as in accordance to the EIA report yesterday, their production would increase in 2023 more. So I think we forfeit the idea that there is a market, and the market will always determine what happens to the world economy. And investments and investors and those who lend will move where the market is. Regardless of the current signals, the true signals will be the rewards that people would be reaping if they do the right investment in the right time. And therefore, here comes the reality. People now skip the so-called La La Land scenario and focusing on the reality as we see it. We're not saying anything except focusing on what we develop, because I think we will be doing ourselves a great job and doing the world a great job if we can create of what we are doing a model for people to see. We will not be in the business of talking, we will be in the business of doing. Right. Some of our young cadets remind me of a line that I use all the time, that we're here to develop and to prove. And actually, we have, as you know, Andrew, and Andrew has been involved with us, we're doing all of the above. Actually, our energy strategy, which will be published very soon, is congregating around the circular carbon economy. We, as you know, His Highness the Crown Prince, Prince Mohammed, is extremely focused on local content. Because there is a lost opportunity that we need to not forfeit. It just so happened that in the energy sector itself, and if you congregate other beneficiaries that would come as a result of the evolution of, I would call it localization program. And you know how we operate in the energy ecosystem. We bring all parties involved with us to work with us. We have a number to reach out, which is exactly, Mr. Khraif is here with us. He will tell you more about that too. It's about 2.8 trillion riyals of potential localization in Saudi Arabia by 2030. So we will be manufacturing a lot of these things, and we have an ambition of 75% of localization. That localization scheme would bring a lot of investment in this country.
Yes.
And again, that would entail using everything, using talent, using minerals, using everything that this part of the world can produce. What is more important, it would bring opportunities, investment opportunities, training opportunities, jobs opportunities, growth opportunities, GDP growth contribution, and a continuity of jobs and a continuity of thriving economy. But you have to put these plans in real tests.
Right.
And you have to work with everybody that can enable you to achieve these targets. And you have to KPI it. And yes, we have to have a leadership that will be on everybody's neck, including myself, to make sure that these things are delivered. Because it is not something that we do it out of luxury. It is something that we need to do it out of a belief that we owe it to this generation and the generations to come.
Yeah, and I think the conversation at the industry ministry, NIDLIP, the downstream sectors like automotive, you mentioned Lucid Motors, Project Velocity. There's a lot of conversations on infrastructure, Aramco and what it's doing with creating state champions, the hydrogen economy, the world's largest green hydrogen at NEOM. If you think about the world's largest solar project, I mean, this is the greatest story never told, actually.
No,
that you're creating demand.
No, it will be. Next week, we will be celebrating pilot projects in 8 sites when it comes to hydrogen. Next week, there will be a signing ceremony. I wouldn't take away the steam out of it. And yes, we have the potential of being, in Saudi Arabia, will continuously, fortunately for our friends, unfortunately for our foes, will be the leading part in the energy map, period.
And in our remaining, I think that's something that needs to be talked about from a partner point of view. Many people in the room, if you're hearing this for the first time, as we bring it back to minerals and mining and the opportunity there that demand will create, it's mind-blowing. And the great work that's been done by the ministry on geological mapping, permits, the minister talked about it in his keynote. I think we need to really bring that message that there will be demand locally for the energy, new energy, as well as energy transition. I think that's a synergy that's not being talked about.
As we speak now, we're talking with our colleagues with the PIF on how to localize renewable. Nobody can imagine how much people are very serious, reaching out to us, wanting to be a part of our story. Why? Because they see our story being serious. It's not an elaboration. It's not a PR thing. It's part and parcel of our planning. We are KPI to deliver that. We have created the enablers for that. And we are reaching out to people to come and do it with us. We are, luckily, we're demonstrating what we potentially can do. Now, we're served by economics. When you become the cheapest producer of electricity coming from renewable, and when you have the biggest experience when handling desalination, the most logical argument that comes after of that, why you cannot be the cheapest producer of green hydrogen. And the answer is that we can. Why? Because these two things will enable us to do that. Our business model would enable us to do that. We're not cocooned and blocked in and what have you. We're open to every opportunity that comes our way, to every technology that comes our way. If you have that openness toward adapting any potential technology that might evolve, that would be making the whole thing more effective, more efficient, more cost-effective, more efficient. If you can bring partners with you that can trust you, and that trust will have to be earned because you would have to have an established record with them of being candid, honest, serious, elaborate, thoughtful, and committed. These partners will come in, will work with you, and you have to also share with them the benefits, because without which they would not be. We're working with our friends from the EU. We hope that we can aggregate, for example, our EU partners to work with us on delivering hydrogen. Either it is ammonia shipped by, or even piping it.
Right.
We're working with our friends from the East on blue. Again, we're becoming more prolific when it comes to gas.
Right.
We're handling shale gas as good as, actually, I'll give it to ourselves. We have a much better shale potential than even the US when it comes using the new technologies that it is in existence today. And we are trying some new technologies which would make it even much more efficient, much more effective, and more important, believe it or not, more environmentally friendly than anywhere else.
So I think that not only deserves a round of applause, we've come to the time of the end of our session. It's been fascinating talking with you and listening to you. I think Saudi Arabia being open for business, Saudi Arabia cooperating, public-private partnerships, and bringing companies of all levels, large, medium, small, and we'll talk about it on a panel coming up this afternoon. I want to thank you, Your Highness. I mean, it's been a pleasure to be with you on the stage, and yes, you did shock me at the back to say, throw out all the questions, but you had all the answers anyway, so please, a round of applause for His Highness. Thank you.